What's up, guys? Void here, coming back at you all with another Commander deck tech video for another patron of mine, a brand new one yet again. I love it when you guys show your support. Nicholas wanted me to do an Dragon deck tech. He wanted the whole theme to basically be legendary dragons. The theme of all the broods coming together under the banner of the Father is what he specifically told me. So I think that is a pretty cool idea, and that's what we're going to try to do here. Obviously, we can't just do all legendary dragons because there are obvious inclusions that would make the deck much better, and we have to include a lot of those dragons that aren't necessarily legendary. So for the most part, we're going to try to make them legendary, but just understand there are going to be some good staples that we don't want to miss out on. If you're unfamiliar with the Dragon, a massive 9 mana in 5 colors for a 10/10 legendary creature dragon avatar with eminence. As long as the Dragon is in the command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast are going to cost you 1 less, which is just a ridiculous thing in its own right, because your dragon spells are inherently going to cost you 1 less just for playing this guy as your commander. That is ridiculous. We haven't seen anything like this before. We've seen interactions with the command zone that are pretty busted, but the fact that having this guy as your commander is going to make it easier to cast your other spells. You don't really have to pay any mana. There's really no cards or interactions that you need to have to make this work other than just having this guy as your commander, and I think that's incredibly busted. Also has flying, obviously a dragon. Whenever one or more dragons you control attacks, you get to draw that many cards. So if you have 4 dragons attacking, you get to draw 4 cards, and then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield, which is likely going to be another dragon, but it could also be a good artifact, enchantment, or even a land if you're desperate. But once you do get the Dragon out, I highly doubt you're going to be running out of good things to put onto the battlefield. The whole purpose is to cheat and to play some cool, awesome dragons with hopefully some pretty good ETBs to go with it. Now, as far as our lands go, it's the typical for 5 colors. I think there's a couple that are worth noting. Crucible of the Spirit Dragon and Haven of the Spirit Dragon for flavor purposes. The Crucible is going to allow us to save up some counters. That way later in the game we can get more mana for it. And Haven of the Spirit Dragon is going to give us a way to get the mana we need for our dragon spell specifically. However, we can also sacrifice it to return either a dragon creature card or an Ugin Planeswalker card from our graveyard to our hand. We're not going to be playing Ugin, but we will be playing a ton of dragons that we can get back to our hand. I think flavor-wise, that's a pretty good reason to put this card in here. The rest is just going to be a bunch of those tap lands that tap for 3 different mana. We don't want to go overboard with the cost when it comes to the lands. You could definitely do that in a 5-color deck. We want to keep this deck under $300 if we can help it, which is still possible. I think it's around $260, which is pretty fair considering there are a lot of good additions. So onto the artifacts, we play the typical Soul Ring. Felwar Stone in a 5-color deck. Felwar Stone is one of the best cards you can include. Chances are your opponents are going to have the mana that you need. Lightning Greaves, good protection, a way to also give our Dragon haste so that we can then trigger and get a permanent onto the battlefield. That is awesome. Chromatic Lantern, Commander Sphere, Darksteel Ingot are all 3 mana rocks that are going to tap to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. Chromatic Lantern is going to give us better mana fixing. Commander Sphere is going to give us a way to draw a card if we're desperate, and Darksteel Ingot is just indestructible, so pretty awesome there. Then we have Fist of Suns, a 3 mana artifact. I love this card. Dragon's basically just going to cost 5 mana, so that's pretty cool. An early way to cheat the guy out and get more of your stuff out on the battlefield. That's always nice. Herald's Horn, another way to give some cost reduction for our other dragons. So I think that is pretty awesome as well. But we also get an awesome upkeep trigger where we can get a dragon to our hand if it's on the top of our library. That way we can speed things up a little bit. Urza's Incubator is fantastic. Yet again, more cost reduction. I don't know if you guys have noticed yet, but a lot of dragons in this format are massive, and a lot of generic mana. If you can just get through that, it should be a lot easier to cast them, get them out there. One of the biggest problems with dragons as a tribe is just the speed. They're incredibly slow, so if you have ways like this to speed them up, you can get more cost reduction. That's always fantastic. Then we move on to our creature spells. The bulk of the deck, about 32 of them. Dragon Lord's Servant is going to start it off here. Just a cheap little cost reduction goblin shaman here. Gonna make it to where our dragons cost 1 less. That's always nice. And then we're gonna follow it up with a dragon speaker shaman, a little bit better because our dragons are gonna cost 2 less. So in addition to the dragon, that's just insane cost reduction yet again. And then we have Taigam Ojatai Master. We don't really care too much about the instants and sorceries, but our dragons being uncounterable by spells or abilities is always nice. And I think for flavor purposes, while he isn't a legendary dragon, I think it does serve some sort of purpose when we have a lot of the same dragons from Tarkir as a plane. I think it fits in pretty well with the tribe. So that's a nice little bit of support there. Then we have Dragon Lord Ojutai, has hexproof as long as he's untapped. And whenever Ojutai deals combat damage to a player, we look at the top 3 cards of our library. Then we put one of them into our hand and the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. So not the best combat damage trigger, but it's certainly something. If you're desperate for card draw, it's not the worst dragon that you can have in this type of deck. Does count towards the legendary creature requirement for this deck tech specifically, so I think that's pretty cool. And also has a way, it has hexproof when it's untapped, so if it doesn't have haste, you really don't need to worry too much. Then we have Dromoka the Eternal. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, you get to bolster 2. Most dragons are going to be pretty big anyway, so you're likely going to give even a decent sized dragon 2+1/+1 counters. I think that's pretty nice. And that's for each dragon you control attacking, so it doesn't matter if it's 3 or 10, you're going to get bolster triggers for each of them individually, so that's pretty sweet. Kolaghan, the Storm's Fury, this one is pretty sweet as well. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Has the dash ability, which is pretty underrated. Yeah, you keep returning it back to your hand, so you have to re-dash it in there. But it's pretty sweet when you consider each time you dash it, Kolaghan has haste. You're going to keep giving all of your dragons a +1/+0 for each dragon you control attack buff. So if you have 4 of them, that's +4/+0. And note how it doesn't just say dragons get the +1/+0 until end of turn, it's just your creatures. So if you have other creatures out there, maybe some other tokens, whatever, Kolaghan is fantastic in those strategies as well. And then we have Scale Lord Reckoner. Not technically a legendary dragon, but nevertheless an awesome and must-have addition for this deck. Whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. So it's really cool. Basically, it doesn't even have to do anything to destroy a dragon you control or even exile it. It just has to become the target of a spell or ability. So even if it's something like bouncing it back to your hand, tapping it, you get to destroy a permanent they control. That is just fantastic. Another thing that dragons don't necessarily do well is sort of pressure your opponents in that kind of way. Almost like control, dragons are more or less just the pressure type of tribe, where it's all about overwhelming your opponents in the air with a ton of power, whereas this kind of forces them to play a certain way and not target your stuff, or they end up paying the price. And then we have Scion of the Dragon, obviously going to be in this deck, has Dragon in the name, and is one of the better ones, honestly, has been the dragon commander for such a long time until the Dragon came along. But being able to search your library for a dragon permanent, you put it into your graveyard, and have it become a copy of that card until the end of turn, I think that's pretty sweet. Always a fun way to interact in response to other cards. I think that's pretty sweet. Just to make things a little bit more unexpected for your opponents. That's why I've always loved Scion. Really awesome dragon. Then we have Scourge of Valkis, because if you are able to get a ton of dragons out there, you might as well want to get some damage triggers for them. It's going to deal X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control, so the more the better. And also has your typical fire breathing, so pretty sweet. Skithiryx is another awesome legendary dragon. Pretty pricey, but it's definitely worth it for Infect, and you have a win con there. You can easily knock players out of the game, especially if you have any sort of buff that you can give, which there are a few. You only really need 10 poison counters to deal with your opponents, so that's pretty easy. Wasitora Nikoru Queen. She's flying and trample. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices a creature. If they can't, you get to create a 3/3 black, red, and green cat dragon creature token with flying. That is just an amazing creature token. 3 different colors. You don't see that often. But yet again, most players don't want to sacrifice creatures. Another way that dragons are going to pressure your opponents in different ways they haven't done before. So that's pretty cool. Croesus the Purger, another one that deals with combat damage triggers. You can pay 3 black when you're able to do that. If you do, you choose a color, and then that player reveals their hand and discards all cards of that color. Pretty simple, but another way you can punish your opponents, kind of like control. Dragon Broodmother has the Devourer Token, so at the beginning of each upkeep, you get a 1/1 red and green dragon creature token with flying and Devourer 2, which is also pretty sweet. So if you have anything that deals with numbers, creature tokens, or just numbers of dragons in general, like a lot of the cards I just mentioned, having a ton of dragon tokens just each upkeep is sweet. You don't even have to use the Devourer 2. I rarely ever do. Sometimes it's better just to have a bunch of dragon tokens. So just a sweet dragon to have in the deck. Dragon Lord Dramoka, another awesome dragon, one of my favorites. Can't be countered, flying and lifelink, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So kind of like a Grand Abolisher on a pretty badass dragon. One of the legendaries from Tarkir that was definitely worth putting in this deck. And we also have another one in Dragon Lord Silumgar, flying Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target creature or planeswalker as long as you control Dragon Lord Silumgar. So pretty cool. What we expect out of these colors, you get to steal, have that steal effect there. Not the best one as far as the legendary dragons go from the Tarkir block, but pretty cool. 3/5 flying Death Touch. Intat the Dreamer, probably one of my least favorite legendary dragons, but still worth putting in here. When it deals combat damage, yet again another combat damage trigger, you get to pay 3 mana in that blue. If you do, exile the top card of your library face down. You get to look at that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you get to play that card without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains on the battlefield. So yeah, while you are getting a free casting, it's not the most efficient way to get a free casting, because even if you are able to deal combat damage, there's nothing really guaranteeing that the top card of your library is going to be something you're going to be able to cast for free anyway. It could just be a land and you can't really cast lands. So pretty risky, but if you're able to get something off the top, I guess it's amazing. Kokasho the Evening Star, yet another awesome legendary dragon. Each opponent is going to lose 5 life when he dies. So one of those dragons that you want to have keep coming back. Pretty sweet. Newmont the Devastator just made another deck tech based around this guy. It was all about land destruction. Did that for another patron. Still pretty sweet in this type of deck. Even if you're able to just ping off 2 different lands, you don't know. Maybe someone really needs a command tower. Maybe they really need a homeward path. Some utility land that they're relying on for their survival in the game. It's always good if you can have that unique, almost like niche removal, pretty sweet card. Ramos Dragon Engine, another way we can ramp up pretty quickly, get our Dragon out there. We should definitely have the mana to get him out there by the time we're able to remove 5+1/+1 counters. Ryusei the Falling Star. When this guy dies, you get to deal 5 damage to each creature without flying, which I don't know if you guys have noticed yet, not many creatures in our deck without flying. Silumgar the Drifting Death. This Silumgar is actually much better because he has hexproof, and whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures defending player controls are going to get -1/-1 until end of turn. So again, better if you have multiple dragons out there, better with a Dragon Broodmother because you get a ton of those dragon tokens, and whenever those attack, you get a ton of those triggers. So you're likely going to deal with all of your opponent's indestructible creatures. If they have an Avacyn Angel of Hope, she's probably going to go bye-bye. Pretty sweet. Steel Halkite, a staple, honestly, if you're going to have a dragon deck, especially in 5 colors, really easy to get it out there. And very useful as far as removal goes. You can deal with multiple different permanent types. You do have to deal combat damage in order to be able to pay the mana in the first place, so keep that in mind. But still awesome as far as colorless removal goes. And then we have Teneb the Harvester, another one of those older legendary dragons from Planar Chaos, I believe. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to pay 3 mana. This time it's black version. If you do, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So really cool. You get some graveyard recursion. You get some creatures, not just dragons from your graveyard, but creatures from your opponent's graveyard as well. So you're able to do that. I think that's pretty cool. One of the better ones, if I had to say so, from that era. And then we have Atarka World Render. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike until end of turn. While it's not the most exciting or most unique, giving double strike to dragons is likely going to win you the game. We have a ton of them out there. If you give double strike to the dragon, you are likely going to deal commander damage to someone, because we have some pump effects, we have some anthems, so we can likely make that happen. And then we have Balefire Dragon. If you do deal combat damage with this one, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. Like I said before, if you're able to give it double strike or some other anthems, you're likely going to deal with a lot of their stuff. A lot of your problems are going to go away because of this guy. Pretty sweet. Blade Wing the Risen. When this guy enters the battlefield, you get to return target dragon permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So pretty sweet. We don't have too many dragons that deal with bringing other dragons back, so it's nice that we have this bit of synergy with this dragon. And we also have kind of an anthem on an activated ability for all of your dragons, so it's kind of like a group fire breathing. So I think that's pretty neat. We have Deathbringer Regent. This one I felt like was more necessary than because of the legendary dragon. It's not legendary, so it kind of fails flavor-wise, but it's still important. I think dragons are easy to get outnumbered, so you might as well have something that can deal with all of the problems on the board and still leave you with a pretty sweet Deathbringer Regent. Dragon Lord Atarka, one of the better Dragon Lords, is going to enter the battlefield and you can deal 5 damage divided. So you're able to hit Planeswalkers with that, which is arguably better than a lot of removal if you can also ping Planeswalkers in addition to players or creatures. That's pretty sweet. And we have Karthus, Tyrant of Jund. In a dragon-based deck, it's always cool if you could just gain control of all the dragons and then just swing for game. Because there are a lot of cool decks that maybe aren't dragon tribal, but they do end up playing some sort of dragon. You can take advantage of that, but even if you don't, if you're able to cheat it in a play, maybe you have a bunch of dragons that don't have haste, Karthus coming into play is going to give all of your other dragons haste and untap them, so you're able to swing in addition to the flying 7/7 with haste. I think that's pretty sweet. We have Ojutai, Soul of Winter. When this Ojutai attacks, you tap a target non-land permanent an opponent controls, and that permanent doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So it's kind of like, again, control with dragons. It's pretty sweet. We don't see too much of this, at least not before the Tarkir block. A lot of dragons were just good at overwhelming with power. That's usually what we've expected from dragons, fire breathing, that kind of stuff. It's really cool that we see some dragons like this that deal with some control themes. We have Tyrant's Familiar, kind of like a Balefire dragon, but not as good because you do need to have Lieutenant, you do need to have your commander in order to give Tyrant's Familiar +2/+2, and whenever it attacks, it's going to deal 7 damage to target creature defending player controls. So you do need to have your commander out there, but if you don't, still a 5/5 with flying and haste. So at the very worst, you're going to get some power there with haste. I think that's pretty sweet, but you definitely want to have your Dragon out there. And then we have, to wrap the creatures up, we have Utvara Hellkite, one of those necessary dragons to have in any dragon deck. Whenever your dragons attack, for each dragon attacking, you're going to get a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. Like I said before, numbers do matter, so yet again another good reason to have a dragon broodmother. You get more dragon tokens out of that. So that's pretty sweet, easy to overwhelm your opponents at that point. Now as far as our Planeswalkers go, we do have a Sarkhan Unbroken. We're not going to play any others like Ugin, even though flavor-wise that might work out, but this one is honestly the best for dragons, and it's really meant for this deck. The plus is just pure value. You get more mana, you get to draw a card. Can't really complain. The minus is going to give you a dragon token if you're desperate. That's pretty sweet. And the ult is awesome because you get to search for any number of dragon cards and then you get to put them onto the battlefield. That is pretty sweet. That's an awesome ult. Perfect for this type of deck. And the main reason why Sarkhan's in here in the first place. Then we move on to our enchantments. We have 6 of them. We have Dragon Tempest because we have a lot of flying creatures. Giving them haste is exactly what we want to do. We want to be able to trigger the Dragon quicker, get more stuff out there. Never a bad thing, and even if our other dragons don't have haste, we can give that to them. But even better, whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it's going to deal X damage to a target creature or player where X is the number of dragons you control. So it's kind of like a Scourge of Valkis yet again with that ETB. I think that's pretty awesome. Temur Ascendancy is going to give all of our creatures haste. So again, very important. We have a lot of expensive dragons. We want to be able to attack with them as soon as we can. And we get to draw a card whenever we have a creature with power 4 or greater enter the battlefield. So that's pretty sweet. Crucible of Fire is an anthem for our dragons, a +3/+3 anthem, so it is pretty amazing. All for 4 mana on an enchantment, can't really beat that. Frontier Siege is going to give us some good consistent mana. If we choose cons, we get 2 green mana at the beginning of our main phases. And this is each main phase, so our first main phase and our post-combat main phase, unless we have any additional main phases, that's usually going to give us an extra 4 mana during our turn. That's pretty sweet. And whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under our control, if we choose dragons, we get to have it fight target creature we don't control. So if we're desperate for that removal, we can get it. Earlier on in the game, we're likely going to go with the mana. Kindred Discovery, yet another good consistency card. Whenever a dragon's going to enter the battlefield or attack, we get to draw a card. So in addition to the Dragon, we're going to get more cards. We're going to get more permanents out there. Pretty sweet. Perfect for the deck. Mirari's Wake in 5 colors. This is honestly an auto-include. Going to give all of our dragons +1/+1. All of our creatures, really, +1/+1. And we can pretty much double whatever lands we have, their mana that they produce. And then we're going to move on to the sorceries. Demonic Tutor, going to get us whatever we need. A good combo piece. Whatever dragon we happen to need. Whatever removal spell. Whatever card we really need. We get to search it up. It's a perfect card. Farseek, Rampant Growth, both 2 mana, but they're going to get us whatever land we need from our library. Farseek's going to get us a specific land. It can get us a shock land because it searches for a land type like plains, island, swamp, or mountain. Doesn't say it has to be a basic land, so we can search up a ton of different lands. Rampant Growth is going to get us a land, a basic land, from our library onto the battlefield tapped, so it's going to ramp us up 1 technically. And Cultivate and Kodama's Reach are going to ramp us up 1 and also get us another basic land. So if we're desperate and we're missing 2 different colors, hopefully we have green, and it's easier to get the other 2 that we really need the most. So perfect cards, and we also play Explosive Vegetation because, hey, we might as well get some more ramp. We get to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped. Yet again, going to ramp us up a bit and give us some more mana fixing. We play Crux of Fate because we are in Dragon Tribal, and it's pretty awesome when we can just destroy all non-dragon creatures when we control only dragons. That's pretty awesome. Let's say something's gone terribly wrong and our opponents have all of our dragons, then we could destroy all dragon creatures. So can't really go wrong with the card. Patriarch's Bidding is perfect because if our graveyard is filled with nothing but dragons, we get to bring them all back, and hopefully our opponents aren't playing anything that's worse than dragons. We should be good as long as we're the ones with the majority of creatures that share the same creature type in our graveyard. Merciless Eviction, perfect card, super flexible. We get to choose one of these 4 permanent types, so artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and planeswalkers, and we get to exile all of that chosen permanent type. Out of a lot of the different modes cards, this is one of the better ones because you get to exile. It's going to deal with indestructibles, which are so difficult to deal with this type of deck. And then to wrap the deck up, we have 4 instants, Swords to Plowshares. You got to have some creature removal. Anguished Unmaking, again, exiling removal for non-land permanents. Dragons aren't usually the best when it comes to dealing with other permanents. They can usually deal with creatures pretty well, but getting rid of problematic enchantments, artifacts isn't something that they can really do too well. Crocent Grip, split second, destroying an artifact or enchantment that's likely a combo piece, is pretty underrated, and I likely throw it into just about every single green deck that I can. And then we have a Sarkhan's Triumph, an instant speed tutor for dragons, is very cool, very awesome, incredibly underrated. You get to put it into your hand, instant speed for 3 mana. Sign me up for that any day of the week. That's awesome. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this deck tech. Nicholas, thanks for becoming a new patron of mine. Always love it when you guys support me and request awesome deck ideas. This one was pretty cool. I don't think I've ever done an Dragon deck before, so I was more than welcome to explore it this time. A lot of cool legendary dragons to choose from, so having that as a theme I think is pretty sweet. But as always, feel free to leave any suggestions in the comments section below. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.